Hi, let's look at least common multiples today. So let's start with vocabulary. Let's review what a multiple is. If I ask for the multiples of 6, I want you to start off as 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24, 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 6 is 36, 6 times 7 is 42, 6 times 8 is 48, and you could keep going and going and going, but that's far enough right now. Look at the multiples of 8. 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 3 is 24, 8 times 4 is 32, 8 times 5 is 40, 8 times 6 is 48, 8 times 7 is 56, and you could keep going, but that's far enough for now. Now sometimes they just ask you, well, what are common multiples of the number? And I want you to notice they had a 24 in common, and they also had a 48 in common. And if I kept going and going, I would find other numbers that they have in common. So common multiples can keep going and going. And that's why they usually ask us to find the least, the lowest common multiple. And so the lowest common multiple for 6 and 8 would be 24. It was the smallest multiple they had in common. And we'll do least common denominator later. So let's look at if they ask us to find the least common multiple. Find the least common multiple of 6 and 14. Well, I love the division method that we were using for greatest common factor. Let me show you how it works. Put the 6 and the 14 and put that upside down division, and then I want you to just do the same thing that we did for GCF. We would say, okay, they have a 2 in common, so we put a 2 here, and then we would divide. 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. 14 divided by 2 would give us 7. Now here's what's different. To get the LCM, the least common multiple, draw a big giant L shape, like a bubble L. So what I mean by that is grab the greatest common factor and everything along that bottom row. Okay, that's our least common multiple. So the least common multiple would be the 2 and the 3 and the 7 when we multiply all those. So 2 times 3 times 7 would give us 42. So that's the least common multiple. Now if I asked you what was the greatest common factor, you would say 2. But you can get all of that using the division method. Now this is pretty cool. We can find the least common multiple of monomials, the algebra. And remember, I'm going to tell you, write out the variables. So notice how 6xy I want you to write like this. 16x squared, I want you to write 16 times x times x. And let's do our division method. So put 6xy and 16xx and draw that upside down division. Start with just the numbers. What would go into 6 and 16? Well, hopefully you know they're both even, so 2 works. So put a 2 on the outside and divide. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and I bring down the x, bring down the y. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and I bring down the 2 x's. Now looking at the 3 and the 8, I notice I'm done. There's nothing that goes into them except 1. So now look at the letters. So notice they both have an x in common. So I circle the x and I bring it to the outside here. And then the 3 comes down, the y comes down, the 8 comes down, the x comes down. Now you know you're done on the bottom layer when they have nothing in common. And so now to get the least common multiple, draw that big giant L shape. So grab the greatest common factor on the side and the bottom row and put that all together. So the least common multiple would be 2 times x times 3 times y times 8 times x. And now grab all the numbers and multiply. So 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 8 gives us 48. And then x times x gives us x squared. And then just bring down the y. So the least common multiple is 48x squared y. Okay, take a look at number 1 on the checkpoint. They want us to find the least common multiple of 8 and 18. So I write the 8, I write the 18, and I draw that upside down division. And I notice they're both even, so I'm going to take the 2 out and I divide. 8 divided by 2 leaves me 4. 18 divided by 2 leaves me 9. Now with 4 and 9, they have nothing in common except 1, so I know I'm done. So to find the LCM, I start with the greatest common factor, I grab everything on the bottom, and I draw that big giant L shape. So the LCM is 2 times 4 times 9. 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 times 9 is 72. And I just see times 4 times 9. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 9 is 72. So the LCM is 72. Okay, take a look at number 3. 12x and 18x squared. So I wrote it here, 12x and 18 times x times x. I did the upside down division, and then just look at the numbers, 12 and 18. 6 goes into both, so I put a 6 on the outside and I divided. 12 divided by 6 left me with 2, and I bring down the x. 18 divided by 6 is 3, and I bring down both x's. Now notice they have one x in common, so you can circle it or underline it and bring it outside here. And so now drop the 2 down, drop the 3 down, and drop the x down. So with 2 and 3x, they have nothing in common except 1. So now I'm going to grab my red and I draw that big giant L. I grab the greatest common factor and the bottom row. And my LCM is 6 times x times 2 times 3 times x. So 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 3 is 36, and then x times x is x to the second power. Okay, let's do this last example, number 4, 4xy and 10xz to the second power. So notice how I wrote 4xy and 10xzz. And now do the upside down division and just take a look at the 4 and the 10. Since they're even, I'm going to put the 2 on the outside and divide. 4 divided by 2 leaves me 2. I bring down the x, bring down the y. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and I bring down the x and the z and the z. Now, notice how they have the 2 and the 5, I'm finished. Nothing goes into them except 1. So now I'm going to look at the variables. Notice how they both have an x. So I'm going to underline, or you can circle it, and then bring that x to the outside here. And when you divide, remember you're just bringing down the 2 and down the y, bring down the 5 and bring down both of the z's. And now look at 2y and 5zz. They have nothing in common, so you know you're finished. So grab your red and grab the greatest common factor and grab everything along the bottom and draw that bubble shape L. And that everything inside of there is going to be part of your LCM. So I just copied 2 times x times 2 times y times 5 times z times z. Okay, first put together the numbers. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. Then I find all the letters in order, alphabetical order. So there's only one x, so I bring the one x. There's only one y, so I put the y here. And there are two z's. Well, z times z is the same as z to the second power. So my LCM is 20xy z to the second power.